a pecan pie, or any sort of fruit pie that has a crumb topping where the edges of the pie is exposed, you want that pretty crimping. So a lot of people just take a fork, and that's kind of an easy way to do it, but I'll just show you how we do it professionally. So I'm going to fold this extra lip over gently, and I'm rotating my pie as I'm pressing very lightly. I'm not leaving fingerprints, and I'm just creating this slightly thick border. I'm just trying to rotate it as I go. So this is what's going to help that crust keep that pretty crimped edge. So again, I'm just going to make sure that that pie crust is in there. So I have this pretty even, thicker rim around here. And now there's a couple different ways to do this. Some people like to use their knuckle. I really just like to use my finger. And I use my thumb and my pointer finger, I'm right-handed, on my left hand. And then I use the pointer finger on my right hand to kind of hold that crimp in place. And I'm basically sticking my finger down on the edge of this pie tin, and I'm very gently pinching as I go. And this will probably look, if you're not used to doing this, it'll probably look, I'm probably making it look easier than it actually, it's easy, and I'm probably making it look easier than you might have when you're doing it the first time, but just practice. So again, my finger is flat here, and I'm pinching here, and I'm just going to rotate the pie crust. So don't be upset if yours doesn't come out just like this the first time you do it. This has taken quite a few years of practice. So by doing that, I have this nice crimped edge. So if I was making a pecan or pumpkin pie with this, I would actually probably chill it or even freeze it a little bit. And then I would poke holes in the bottom of it so that it doesn't shrink up on me when I'm baking it. Another thing you could do is put another pie tin inside of it with some beans or rice when it's really cold and bake it that way to start and just kind of give it a little bit of a start to it. Or if you're making your pie like a lemon meringue or something that doesn't get baked with its filling, or a French silk pie, you want to make sure that crust is fully baked. So doing that would definitely help. So for this, I'm going to actually kind of destroy my edge so that I can show you now how to make the filling and then lattice the top of the pie. Okay, so I have about 8 cups of local Crispin apples here. We like to use a nice tart apple. A lot of people use Granny Smiths. They're not local to New York, so I like to use Crispins. We can also use, my favorite apple is John Max, but they're only available earlier in the apple season. You can also use something like an Ida Red or a Cortland even. And I have a little bit of water and lemon juice. I drained off the water, and it just helps them not turn really brown. If they're a little bit brown, it's not going to hurt anything. It's all going to get baked up together anyway. So I'm going to take my 8 cups of apples, and then here I have, again, our cane sugar, some cinnamon, salt, and a little bit of flour that's going to help hold it together. There's a little bit of nutmeg as well. So I'm just going to mix all of this in. And this is the only part, you can make your crust ahead of time. I really wouldn't make an apple filling ahead of time because what happens is the sugar kind of draws all those juices out of your apples. So you can absolutely prep your apples a day ahead of time or a couple days ahead of time even, but I wouldn't mix them with the sugar, the flour, and the spices because you're going to end up with a really wet mixture. So I just want to make sure all of my apples are evenly coated. And you could add all different kinds of spices. We use nutmeg and cinnamon. You could add allspice. You could even add a little bit of ginger to mix it up a little bit, or even add some dried fruit. Dried cranberries would be really delicious. We sell a vegan apple crisp at the co-op that we put cranberries in. So I'm going to put my filling in my pie. And apples bake down quite a bit. Can everybody still hear me? Being in a grocery store and doing this is a little loud, but we're working with it. Okay, so apples do cook down a little bit, so we want to make sure they're heaped up quite a bit when we're doing this. Okay, I'm just going to change my gloves real quick. And I have that other half of my pie dough. So again, just a very small sprinkling of flour. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did before, but I might not go quite as thin. I want to go fairly thin again to make sure that our dough is baked all the way through. But just because we have that filling in there, that bottom crust has a tendency to be a little more wet. So we want to make sure that that's fairly thin. Keeping it in a circle will ensure that we have enough dough to get some nice even strips to lattice across our pie. So if you want these to be perfect, you can use a ruler to cut them. I'm just going to freehand some strips, and some people prefer thinner strips. I like to do about an inch strip. So I'm just very carefully with a paring knife going to cut strips of dough. And you could use like a pizza cutter or a pastry wheel as well. This over. And then I'm going to take this. And there's a couple different ways to lattice that yield the same result, but I like to do it where I lay all of my strips that I'm going to use across one way. I think I'm going to get 4 across here. For a shorter one, you want to try to use up all your dough so you can use the shorter ones on the edges. And so I'm going to pick which side is going to be my starting side. So I'm going to pinch this down so that it attaches to my dough. And then I like to alternate this way. So I'm going to flop these over, and then I'm going to just lay this one down. And then I'm just going to pinch off the extra dough here. And I'm going to lay these back across. And I'm going to do the same thing with the opposite pieces of dough. And again, I'm going to pinch these off. Opposite pieces. And our last piece. And then usually because we have our homemade pie shells that we make here at the co-op with our pie press, our crust looks a little different on the edge. So I actually have a decent amount of dough here, so I can actually go back. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. And then I can actually go back and flute the edge of my pie. Just finishes it off nice. And then something fun that we are going to do is I'm just going to take some of my extra little pieces of dough, and I have a couple more cut out pieces here. And so you can use dough like this, and then you can just add some fun little shapes. So I have a little star cutter here. It's just a little aspect cutter, and I'm just going to cut out a few little stars. You can use any shape. It's really pretty if you have fall leaves. You can kind of add some fun to the top of your pie. So I did cheat a little bit, and I do have some more cut out. And then I have 1 egg with a couple tablespoons of water, which is how I like to make my egg wash. Some people use a little bit of milk. If you're making a vegan pie, you can actually just use water. And what that does is, And if you're making a vegan pie, using the water, it kind of works how if you were on the beach and tanning and you were in the water or by the pool and that you can get sunburnt, it draws the heat to the water. So on your pie, it does the same thing. And she'll be like, say, tanning your pie. So I'm gonna just egg wash all of my dough, and that helps get it nice and brown. And then I can use that egg wash to kind of stick some of these little stars wherever. Like I said, this would be really pretty with some fall leaves. Any shape really, just to add a little extra. And then we like to finish off all of our pies with a little bit more sprinkle of cane sugar. And then you want to bake your pie till it's nice and golden brown. A lot of people, I think, get afraid to let baked goods get that nice golden brown, but that golden brown is what's going to give you all of your flavor. So when you're all finished, you want a pie. This one does not have the cutout. This is the pie that we sell at the co-op. This is our 9-inch pie. Same recipe. This is what you'll get. We're doing our pre-orders for Thanksgiving still that you can order on our website on Webcart. But yeah, it's delicious served with ice cream or any of your favorite. I share that I love to have it with berries, maple walnut, and apple is super delicious. You can actually substitute some of the sugar with some maple syrup in your pie or any other sweetener if you'd like. Yeah, that's pretty much it on making our pie. If anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer them. Questions?
We have quite a few questions here on Zoom, which is great. So what flour would you recommend using for a gluten-free vegan crust?
Gluten-free vegan. So luckily now, if you asked me that 10 years ago, I would probably stumble on that question, but Bob's Red Mill and King Arthur make flours called Cup for Cup. And those pretty much are really good for any recipe that calls for regular flour. They are designed to be cup for cup. So they're supposed to be equal measurements that you would use of a regular AP or a pastry flour. And I would definitely recommend those for sure.
Okay. And then is the recipe different how you make a pie crust and then how you bake the pie crust if it's an apple versus pumpkin pie?
For the pie crust. So I recommend for a pumpkin pie, because it's that wet bottom, to just pre-bake it a little bit, maybe 10-15 minutes, because you'll ensure that that bottom is done, because it is such a wet pie. Custard pies like that tend to be the ones that might have an underdone bottom. And so just pre-baking them a little bit helps. If you feel like you need to for an apple pie or a cherry pie, if you're having that kind of a problem, I would just always pre-bake just a little bit to help give that crust a head start before you put the fruit in it.
And I'm not a pie expert, but do you ever blind bake your crust?
Yeah, so blind baking is what I was talking about. If you were going to put the tin inside of it with rice or beans, that's blind baking so that it doesn't shrink up. That would be if you were going to make a lemon meringue pie, a French silk pie, a coconut cream pie, banana cream, anything where that crust is baked and the filling is not. So yes, that's how I would do it. I don't love the pie beads that they sell. They're like ceramic beads. I think they just don't work as well as using a tin with your rice or beans.
And then if you're pre-making your pie dough, do you recommend keeping it in the fridge or freezer? And then how long for either of those two?
So you can absolutely freeze it. I usually keep it in the refrigerator. I'd say I would keep it in the refrigerator for 5 days, no problem. If you're gonna do it the day before, I would absolutely just leave it out unless it's really warm. If you're in the summer, I definitely would not. But you can keep it out. You just wanna make sure that it's in a cool spot, but I do like to chill it at least at first to kind of set it up a little bit.
And then it seems like the crust was the part that people had the most questions about. So when you're mixing up the butter pieces and then you add the water, how much of those butter pieces should you still be able to see when you're saying don't overmix it?
You want to see most of them, to be honest. You are going to work some of it in, but when I had that dough, you can, if you're looking at it, I know it's really hard to see on the camera, but you can see most of those butter pieces. And again, that butter is what's going to create that flakiness. Then when you cut into a pie piece, you can see the layers in the crust. That's what you're looking at, are those big butter chunks.
And then let's see what else. When your dough is resting, do you recommend you leave it at room temperature or do you rest it in the fridge?
You can absolutely rest it in the fridge. You just want to bring it back. I know it sounds a little confusing, but you just want to leave it out of the fridge for at least a couple minutes, so that it's not super hard, because that butter can make it hard. So I like to rest it, or at least put it in the fridge for maybe half an hour, and then bring it out for maybe 10 minutes just to keep it chilled still, but a little bit warmer than when it was fully in the refrigerator.
And if you're going to make pie crust to freeze, how would you get it to that stage? Do you recommend keeping it in the ball, or do you press it out in your tin? What do you recommend?
I like to freeze them already pressed out in the tin. What's really nice is they stack really well. So that's how we make them at the co-op. We started making our pie crust for our Thanksgiving in October. And we freeze them, we stack 4 at a time, we wrap them really well, and they go into our deep freezer. We were prepared to make about 1,200 pies next week, but we're probably looking at making more like 1,400 pies, because everybody keeps buying our pies, and I'm glad that you love them. So we start our prep ahead of time, and they would keep in the freezer for probably about 6 months. We actually sell our frozen pie shells, the 6-inch and the 9-inch in vegan and regular in our freezer in the grocery aisle in 2 packs. So you can even cheat a little bit if you wanted to make a pie and impress your family and buy our pie shells and make your own pie. It's still homemade that way. So.
And then we got a little bit of love for that rolling pin you have. So do you have
yeah.
any leads on where someone can get one?
I actually have one that I bought when I was in pastry school 11 years ago from Williams-Sonoma. But I think you could probably look on Amazon or something. It's just a straight rolling pin. If you have a similar rolling pin with the tapered edges, it's called a French rolling pin. I also really like those. You have both. So this works really well.
All right, it looks like we have no more questions here on the Zoom. Let me just double check. It looks like we caught everybody, but if you still have questions afterwards, you can definitely message us on Instagram or Facebook. You can email 2cents@lexington.coop, and we can get all of those questions over to Rachel and answered, because Shelby and I in the marketing department will not be able to answer those questions for you. And we have a couple late ones coming in. Rapid fire. How large should the butter pieces be?
About pea or hazelnut sized pieces. So you just want to work them, and you still want to be able to see them. It's kind of those things you can feel. You can feel if they feel really big, but about pea size is the best size to reference.
And then Splenda versus sugar. Can you use it, and is it a 1-for-1? How does that go?
I personally am not a fan of Splenda or any chemical sweetener. I try to stay away from that, but I do understand that some people use it. So there is a Splenda for baking. It's really floofy, for a lack of a better term, because Splenda is made out of sucralose, which is about 100 times sweeter than regular table sugar. So you cannot use it in equal parts. But if you're using that special baking Splenda, I believe that you can, but I would just double check me. I would say Google is your friend. But yeah, I don't love Splenda, but you can probably use the baking Splenda.
And then for everyone who's looking for recipes or wondering if this is being recorded, yes, and you will get an email after the class with a link to the recording, as well as a recipe for Lexi's pie, so you can do this at home along with Rachel and be able to pause it and play it back.
We've got a very important question over here on Instagram. What is your favorite pie?
Ooh, my favorite pie? I'm a big strawberry rhubarb fan, which we do make at the co-op in June when our local strawberries and local rhubarb comes in. I just love that sweet tart kind of feelings. And I really love a Dutch crust pie, whether it's apple, whether it's rhubarb. I love that crumb topping. So that's my favorite.
Nice. Someone loves your suggestion for the maple walnut ice cream.
Oh, it sounds good.
Yeah, so Instagram, all of these recipes are available on our blogs. You can go to lexington.coop and you'll have a recipe for the vegan dough, the regular pie dough, and then 3 different kinds of pies that we make in our kitchen. And then you can also sign up for our turkey tips class, which is tomorrow night at 6:30. We're going to show you how to roast a local turkey in 2 hours.
Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.
All right, thanks everyone.
Bye. Happy Thanksgiving.